Thanks, Faith. Happy to be here with everyone to share this time, this Sunday morning with us.
Mm.
Uh, Faith rather mentioned that I wrote a book called The Five Invitations. And the second invitation of the five is welcome everything, push away nothing. Welcome everything, push away nothing. Sounds great, right? Make a good t-shirt or a bumper sticker. But what's it really mean? Is it even wise? It sort of flies in the face of everything we've been conditioned to believe since our early childhood. And conditioned in this way, we work to align our beliefs and our preferences with that of the cultures. And the culture supports that quest. Before we begin our meditation, I wanted to share a brief encounter I had with Joanna Macy. You know, Joanna is, she's about 93 now, and she's the unofficial matriarch of American Buddhism. And she's also a fierce environmentalist. And we were speaking about how the culture is driven by our desire for comfort, for convenience, for security. And in that drive, no cost is spared. And the politicians and the wealthy power brokers and those who represent the industrial society actually are very proud of the idea that no cost is spared in pursuit of our comfort and our convenience and our security. And so in our conversation, Joanna was saying that we're ready to explode mountaintops, to strip off boreal forests, and to let miles of plastic float in our oceans. No cost is spared for our comfort, convenience, and security. I just returned from Japan 2 days ago, and one of the wonderful things that is part of the Japanese experience is that there are no trash cans on the streets. If you have something, a takeaway item, you put it in your pocket until you go home, and then you trash it. So welcome everything, push away nothing. It challenges our very deep conditioning. It challenges our hunger for pleasant sights and smells and tastes and body sensations. It challenges the if only mind. So I thought we'd take a few minutes for some meditation, and I'll guide us in our usual practice of mindful awareness. But then periodically, I'd like to just drop in a phrase as a kind of invitation or reflection that can support your mindfulness practice. And the phrase we'll use is, welcome everything, push away nothing. Welcome everything, push away nothing. So once in a while, I'll just drop that into the awareness and see what we discover, okay? So with that, let's settle into this body, heart, and mind. Becoming aware of the large, gross sensations of the body in the chair or on the cushion, and the subtler sensations of the breath. Perhaps noticing where we feel the breath most vividly. Is it at the tip of the nose, the way the air dances there, or maybe in the way the ribs lift and separate as we inhale and exhale? For some, it's at the diaphragm, the way it expands and contracts when the belly empties and fills. Wherever you feel it most easily, let your attention just rest there. And as we bring our attention to the breath, at one particular location. We also let the doors of perception open, the seeing and the hearing, tasting and smelling, and the touching that we sense in the breath. And just for a moment, maybe bringing your attention to the experience of hearing. The sound of my voice, maybe other sounds in the room where you are or outside the building. And you can notice that just like the breath, these sounds come and go. And they appear and disappear against a background of silence. And the silence itself is undisturbed by the sounds. And see if you can get a sense of that silence. How big is it? Does it live only inside your body and head? Does it have any boundaries? We feel the boundlessness, spaciousness of the silence. Everything's free to come and go, to unfold, to reveal itself. Welcome everything. Push away nothing. Welcome everything. Push away nothing. Welcome everything. Push away nothing. See what happens as you include that invitation. What's the impact of that reflection? Welcome everything. Push away nothing. You can make the phrase your own, just dropping it in once in a while to this open, mindful awareness. Not so much as an instruction, but as an invitation. Welcome everything. Push away nothing. Settling, opening. Realizing. Welcome everything. Push away nothing. Sensing the body, feeling the heart, observing the mind. Welcome everything. Push away nothing. That can't be done as an act of will. It can only be done as an act of love. Thank you for your practice. Nice to practice together. I want to begin with a poem that's attributed to Hafiz, translated, interpreted by Daniel Ladinsky. And it's very short. It goes like this: the subject tonight is love. And for tomorrow night as well. As a matter of fact, I know of no better topic for us to discuss until we all die. The subject tonight is love. And for tomorrow night as well. As a matter of fact, I know of no better topic for us to discuss until we all die. So love includes the caring and the listening and passion and attending to that we're aware of. But there's also a kind of boundless forms of love that are unlike, or at least not limited to, loving someone or something. Yet also not separate from those forms. It arises from within and it supports our awakening. Love supports our awakening. I want to try and talk a little bit about this, about love and longing, and maybe what we could call our most essential nature. It's difficult to speak of these kinds of experiences, perhaps because, well, maybe together we can find some understanding. But to begin, this boundless love that I'm speaking of, at its deepest, it is an expression of our most fundamental true nature, we could say. This love is woven into the very fabric of existence. But I'm also not speaking about some sort of transcendental state. I'm talking about our capacity to love others, to love ourselves, to love life without reservation. To love the inner journey. And on that journey, to love well, to love even the places that are closed in us. And this love, I'm speaking of, it's not a reaction or response, actually. It's an inherent substance of being that we can each recognize and feel. Love is one of true nature's primary expressions. It infuses all the other qualities of being. And I say this not as some psychological concept or spiritual doctrine. It's a state of being that we can all experience directly. In the expanse of our loving awareness, it can take us beyond our personal history and our thoughts and emotions, our body sensations. And yet, it's not separate from any of these aspects of life. It's marked by a profound inclusiveness. You know, when I'm working with people who are dying, I talk about it much more simply. I often ask them if they've ever had an experience of something larger than themselves that also includes themselves. Something larger than themselves that also includes themselves. And for some, of course, it's experienced through religious faith or some kind of spiritual practice. And for others, through a sense of belonging to family or community. That something that's larger than themselves, that also includes themselves, well, it's often found in a moment in nature, in the forest or at a seashore. But many of us imagine that this true nature is somehow something other than we are as humans, as human beings. And this belief gives rise to a gaining idea of achievement. Or we imagine that the contact with our nature is some state of transcendence that requires us to leave our body, minds, and hearts. Leave them behind. But just as calcium is part of the bone, and there is no bone without calcium, Buddha nature naturally infuses all existence. It's not separate from any aspect of who we are. And so the effort to capture enlightenment or our awakening is a case of mistaken identity. It's arising from what I just call a fall into forgetfulness. Now, many of us turn to spiritual practice, to the inner life, to repair our history, to reduce suffering, to heal emotional, psychological wounds. And this is perfectly understandable. But it's not always a healing story. James Baldwin, the African-American writer, wonderful writer, he said to accept one's past, one's history, is not the same as drowning in it. You need to learn how to use it. So when we over-identify with our limiting stories, we start looking outside ourselves for the healing, and sometimes we reify in that process the state of separation. Another way that I talk about true nature to people who aren't necessarily involved in spiritual practice is just as reality. Or we might say being real. Years ago when my children were young and they were leaving the home for school, they would look at me and they'd say, "Keep it real, Dad, keep it real." To me, keeping it real or being real, it indicates some measure of self-love, some kind of love of what we are. And so we want to move toward this wholesomeness, toward what feels real in us. And that wholesome wanting, that love and appreciation, it's essential to our spiritual practice. Without that love, our practice is being done for all the wrong reasons. We don't love because it's good for us, or because our preferences are met, or because we realize some special state of attainment. Because we know in this practice that we do that sometimes being real means allowing the unexperienced pain of our lives to surface. We have to love being real in order to go through the trouble and discipline of inner work. So I don't meditate to become a good person. I don't meditate to become a spiritual person or an idealized me. I meditate to be real. And if we're interested in being real, then, well, we naturally have to get interested in being clear as possible anyway, about what's happening. We want to experience it as intimately as possible. So if I'm feeling anxiety or fear, I want to know it directly. What's it like? It means awareness receives and the experience and embraces it and penetrates into its movements directly. It doesn't know by reflecting on it. Awareness knows through intimacy and immediacy. You know, it's like when you fall in love with someone, you want to find out everything about them. You want to become completely familiar, become completely intimate. And so we need to apply that same interest to knowing ourselves. Being aware of who you are, it can only arise by, well, from love of where you are. And to be there, well, that to me is a form of surrender. Surrender is not taking a position for or against anything. Welcome everything, push away nothing. And I would add that this process that we're in the midst of, we need to keep our hand in this process that we're all engaged in. We need to keep our hands off our inner experience. Don't mess with the unfoldment. Don't mess with the unfoldment of reality. And this reality that I'm referring to, it's frequently glimpsed, in the dying process, which is both inevitable and intimate for all of us. I've seen many people like you and I, ordinary folks, develop these profound insights about their lives in the final weeks, days, hours, moments of their life that have them emerge as something larger than the small separate self they've taken themselves to be. Now, I'm not trying to paint a fairy tale for you. This regularly occurs for people. Now, you might say too late, and I would agree. Too late. However, the value is not in how long they enjoyed the experience, but that the possibility for such transformation exists. And I would suggest that if it's possible at the end of our life, it's possible in the midst of our life. Love helps us to be real. What interests me always is how we can align ourselves with reality rather than pushing it away. You know, when we argue with reality, we always lose. Every time. Welcome everything, push away nothing. To be real, at least for me, is to live and express the truth of who we are. And a common way to recognize that is when we have these moments of feeling a sense of connectedness. This sense of connectedness can be experienced in lots of ways, as a sense of freedom or expansiveness or sense of wonder or pervasive love. For me, it's easiest to feel real when I'm grateful. I feel, when I feel real, I feel gratitude. So why do we want to experience reality? In our practice, we use this expression of realization, which means to know fully, to know completely, to manifest our lives from a deep understanding of non-separation. And why do we want to do this? Perhaps it's because some part of us, deep in our hearts, it knows that we'll never be satisfied until our whole being is conscious of this truth and immersed in this inseparable love. The deep motivation to live in the truth is the longing to belong. You know, the Buddhist writer, Sebene Saleasi, I think is how you pronounce her last name. I'm sure she's taught here at Sangha Live. She writes, "Do you believe that you belong? Well, you do. Yes, everywhere, in every culture, in every circumstance, you belong. You belong in this body, in this breath. You've always belonged. When you succeed, you belong. When you're down on your luck, you belong. When you're hurt or have hurt others, you belong. You belong to the beauty and awful horror of this human condition. And even when you feel you don't belong, you belong." Beautiful piece of writing. And I think this is important to contact with because it provides the proper motivation for our spiritual practice. Without it, I think our practice can become mechanical and automatic and even narcissistic. If we're over-identified with obscurations, the views that occlude our pure seeing, our understanding, they can blind us to our true nature. They can make us feel small, keep us small. When the obstacles are seen through, we have this sense of expanding. Actually, this expanding, it's just the experience of not being identified with the obscurations. So when we rest, when we're not trying so hard, we can experience our heart as a starry night. Faith, can you put up that photo of Starry Night that we have? Yeah. I'm asking you to put this up because when I speak about this, I'm reminded of Vincent van Gogh's famous painting, his wonderful masterpiece of Starry Night, that he painted while recovering in an asylum, near the village of Saint-Romain. And he painted during the day what he saw outside his window at night. And some say it's kind of gloomy, but as I look at it, I find a happiness and a pleasure in it. And there's a lovely quote that's from Van Gogh that's associated with this work. He said, "There is no blue without yellow. There is no blue without yellow." And I think he might be speaking of their relationship in a way that Thich Nhat Hanh would have offered us the teaching of interbeing. And I liken it to the Buddha's teaching on dependent origination, that very complex teaching. But basically it says that everything is part of a limitless web of interconnections that undergo continuous transformation. Every appearance arises from some complex set of causes and conditions that in turn combined with others to produce countless effects. There's no blue without yellow. Yeah, we could take that down now, Faith. Love is an awareness or practices that expose the truth of this interconnection. And we begin to see that we're not small getting bigger. We're already vast. And when we begin to trust in this truth, then in our meditation, the investigation becomes more about how did this vastness begin to experience itself as a frightened child. And this is a very different perspective from which we can lovingly view our suffering. Our suffering is the experience of limitation in the face of truth. The truth of our innate expansiveness. And when we become attached or identified with the contraction, we come to believe in our small sense of self and to function from that in the world. When we go looking for ways to continually reestablish that sense of familiar small self. The small self we've taken ourselves to be. And this is where the impulse of love comes in. The heart's natural desire for deep connection. It fuels the journey. It inspires and deepens our practice. And that's why at some point we stop practicing to get anywhere or to achieve anything. We just practice because we love it. And we love the experience of presence. And that love is felt as a kind of, full participation with the energy and the source of life itself. At least in my experience, this love has its own freedom. When love arises, it just embraces whatever it comes into contact with, even if at first that thing, that object, that person, at least at first glance, seems unlovable. Love recognizes the inseparability that was always there. Even if, as Mother Teresa used to say, it's wearing a distressing disguise. And so we love to learn even the obscurations that block our experience of our nature. Because the obscurations, well, they have true nature embedded within them. They're a distortion, a distorted formation of an essential state. These essential states get distorted as they move through our personalities and are twisted as they move through the conditions of our life. And they come out as something that's kind of like an imitation of an essential state. But if we just follow the breadcrumbs, even in that distorted formation, it'll lead us back. And take, for example, the way attachment is an imitation of love. Attachment likes to masquerade as love. It says, I'll love you if you give me what I need. Attachment's obsessed with getting its needs met. Love's focused on generosity. Love is an expression of our most essential nature. Attachment is an expression of our personality. Love engenders faithfulness, aligning with our values, moving with purpose through life. Attachments, well, they cling to fear and they grasp tightly at a particular outcome or result. Love is selfless and it encourages freedom. Attachment's self-centered and it engenders possessiveness. Love inclines us to gratitude, as I said before, and attachment leaves scars. So when we start seeking this from outside us, just from others, just from something external, we're in trouble. And the resulting experience is a feeling of being unlovable. And then we go about trying to fix ourselves, creating some image that someone at least would think was lovable. And we set out on self-improvement, and even we appropriate the meditation practice to achieve those goals. All of this so will know love. In some spiritual circles, longing is thought of as a negative state, an unskillful action that has to be done away with. nothing but frustrated desire. But I think of longing as an expression of love that's essential and a central aspect of our true nature. So it's important to see that if this longing, that this longing couldn't exist, wouldn't exist, if we didn't know it somewhere deep inside ourselves, at least once in a while. So I think this longing can serve as a kind of lighthouse in a stormy sea. If we allow the longing, allow ourselves to feel bereft of love sometimes, and acknowledge our love for the truth, our homesickness for God, or for whatever feels real to us, we can follow the longing. And staying awake, we can inquire along the way into all the strategies we have, the ways we try to avoid or deny. You know, the practitioner and psychologist and poet Jennifer Wellwood, she reminds us that in both our inner and outer worlds, whenever we look deeply into emptiness, we discover form. And whenever we look deeply into form, we discover emptiness. In this way, I think, we understand that form and emptiness are inseparable, indivisible. In tantric language, we could poetically say that form and emptiness are lovers, joined in a kind of internal embrace, in a constant dance. Not separate, not one, not two. And this understanding has a kind of poetic beauty, but its significance in our human experience takes us beyond just that poetry. You know, taking ourselves to be some kind of solid form, we see emptiness as something that could undermine or annihilate us. And so rather than recognizing emptiness as our own deep nature, we see it as an enemy that we have to defeat. And so we see form as something that we have to fabricate, defend and promote, continually create. And this includes generating a sense of self, at least a self-image, that we're always trying to prop up and defend. I remember that Jennifer wrote that when we fail to recognize the inseparability of form and emptiness, they become divided. And rather than being lovers, they become antagonists. The basic nature of mind is open, spacious, unlimited, infused with love. The nature of our nature is open and loving. I think we discover this through the process of surrender, which to me is a choiceless process. It's not the same as letting go. In letting go, there's an action, a choice to relinquish. We feel in letting go some freedom from restraint. But surrender has a different quality about it. Surrender feels more like expansion. In letting go, we have this sense that we're distancing ourselves from something. We're distancing ourselves from a habit or an object or a person. Some old troubles. But in surrender, we feel ourselves coming closer to something. Something we already have had a sense of. So love is both an expression of the path and also a motivator for the journey. True nature's details are drawn out by love. We often think in this practice that we have to expand our awareness. But our awareness is already at maximum expansion, just as love is always present. And our work is to see through these obscurations, which feels to me like a stripping away process. Gradually we explore the strategies that keep us separate from love, and we touch the armoring around our hearts with some mercy, and it begins to melt. And we see that nothing's separate from this love. And even the ugly and unloved parts of ourselves. So we may as well love. I want to close with a short poem by Padre Gautama. I think it's how you say his name, Padre Gautama, an Irish, wonderful Irish writer and philosopher. And I have a little short video that I want to play that Faith will play for us now. And then we'll spend the rest of our time in dialogue with each other. Okay, Faith, would you be willing to play that short video?
Oh, sorry about that, everyone. I'll post the link.
That's okay, that's okay. Let's see if maybe I have a copy of it and I can read it to you. Hang on one second. Yeah, here, I've got a copy of it here. I'll try and read it. I don't read it as well as he does with his Irish brogue, but I'll give it a try. He's talking about having read some commentaries. He's a biblical scholar, you know, and he was talking about reading some commentaries. And in the midst of these very esoteric, very academic and sometimes esoteric commentaries, there was a commentary on the facts of life. And he wondered, well, what are the facts of life, you know? And so he sat down and wrote himself a poem about this. And it goes something like this. The facts of life. That you were born and you will die. That you will sometimes love enough and sometimes not. That you will lie, if only to yourself. That you will get tired. That you will learn most from the situations you did not choose. That you will be some things, that there will be some things that move you more than you can say. That you will live. That you must be loved. That you will avoid questions most urgently in need of your attention. That you began as the fusion of a sperm and an egg of two people who once were strangers and may still be. That life isn't fair. That life is sometimes good and sometimes better than good. That life is real. And if you can survive it, well, survive it well with love and art and meaning, given where meaning is scarce. That you will learn to live with regret, that you will learn to live with respect, that the structures that constrict you may not permanently be constraining, that you will probably be okay, that you must accept change before you die, but you will die anyway. So you might as well live. So you might as well love. You might as well love. You might as well love. That's his poem. Yeah. So I wanted to spend the remainder of our time in a kind of dialogue with you. You might have a question or a comment that you want to share, and so you can raise your digital golden paw, and Faith will call on you, and we have a bit of a dialogue. I'm going to ask you, of course, to try and keep your comments or questions brief so that we can get to as many people as possible. And I have a kind of prompt for us. You don't have to speak to these questions, but I have a kind of prompt for you. To tell me a way you feel the absence of love. Tell me a way you feel the absence of love. Or to tell me the way you feel the presence of love. Those are prompts that we might include in our discussion together. You needn't restrict yourself to one or more of those questions. So I'd like to know just what's on your hearts and minds. How did this talk land for you? Where did it land for you? In your belly or your heart or your mind? Yeah. Let's explore together. Let's see what we can discover together, okay? So with that, raise your little digital hand. It doesn't have to be something profound. And Faith will call on you, and we'll see what we can discover together, okay?
There are some questions in the chat already, Frank. Should I read those out while we wait for...
Sure, that's fine. Let's go ahead. I'll let you read them out, Faith.
Okay, so there is... I'm intrigued by your definition of the difference between letting go and surrender. I had not thought about...
I'm sorry, Faith, I can't hear you.
Okay. I'm intrigued. So Sheila writes, I'm intrigued by your definition of the difference between letting go and surrender. I had not thought about this difference and would have felt that they are very similar. Do you have any thoughts on that, the difference and similarity between letting go and surrender?
Yeah, well, thanks, Sheila, for the question. And yeah, as I said, letting go is kind of an action. It's an act of, we could say an act of will. It might also include love, but it's an action we take. I let go. That's at least how we think of it or speak of it, yeah? Surrender feels more choiceless to me. I'm not sure that we have any choice when we surrender, yeah? In a way, it happens to us. Years ago, I was rafting down the Grand Canyon in the United States, and it's a big river, big waves, big rapids. And going down the river, I was thrown out of the raft into a giant kind of whirlpool, yeah, that sucked me down, and I did everything possible to get out of it, and I did all the wrong things, yeah. I kept struggling and swimming as if I could swim to the edge of this giant whirlpool and pull myself out as if I was pulling myself out of a swimming pool, you know. And my compatriots on the trip, they threw me lines and tried to have me grab hold of the lines so they could pull me out, but I struggled. And then this whirlpool took me down. It just pulled me down into absolute chaos. And there I was spinning around in some kind of turmoil. And I wish I could say I was relaxed. I wish I could say I was, at ease, but I wasn't. I was terrified, actually. And I kept fighting. Sometimes we come about surrender as a result of a religious experience or some faith or trust that we have. But sometimes we come at it in a different way, through exhaustion, actually. And that's what happened to me in this river. I became completely exhausted. I couldn't fight anymore. And the river just took me down, and it dragged me along the bottom of the river, and it spit me out in an eddy somewhere down the river. And I remember emerging onto the shore with fresh eyes. Yeah. And this gave me some understanding of what it was like when I was with people at the end of their lives who tried to describe some quality of surrender to me. I don't think it's exactly the same, but it was similar. Like when Elizabeth told me that as she was dying, she just wanted to place her head in the lap of Jesus. Or another fellow who told me that he wasn't under his control anymore. And these were experiences of surrender that these folks had, that didn't necessarily come about with ease. When we accept, excuse me, I'm going on here a little bit, but acceptance is also a kind of act of the self. People accept their mortality in a certain way. But that's not the final stage. After that acceptance comes something more. Kind of chaos, not unlike what I experienced in the river. And in that chaos, there's a falling away, a stripping away of the sense of self, an upheaval. And out of this chaos emerges surrender. And surrender is infinitely deeper than acceptance. And it's the doorway to transcendence, actually. Yeah. So that's more than a few words on the subject. But you can feel the difference. You can feel yourself not distancing, but coming closer to. And the experience of surrender often is one of expansiveness, of recognizing some vastness that actually is you. Okay, enough words on that. Let's see if someone else has their hand raised or.
We've just got. So I see, Katie, your hand's raised, but I'm just going to read out. There are another 2 questions that were higher up. So Liz writes, "How do you work with the awful horror of some reality?"
Well, there is horror in our reality. The last time I was here with Sangha Live, I spoke about vulnerability and how I've come to recognize or see vulnerability as one of the most beautiful of human qualities, because it's not weakness, it's a kind of porousness that allows the beauty and the horror of the world to impress itself on our soul. And so I allow myself to be vulnerable, to be porous. Because if I shut myself off to the difficulties of the world, if I build a wall around my heart, I can't also receive the beauty that is part of this life. And I'll never understand the ugliness. I'll never understand the difficulty in life. So vulnerability is courageous, I think. And it allows me to grow in trust, actually, so that when I encounter something that's really challenging, really difficult, like the horrors you're imagining, I have something else to meet it than my own small sense of self. Yeah. Something that can come face to face with it, maybe even embrace it.
Frank, I see Liz is actually here, so maybe she wants to elaborate a little bit on the question.
Okay,
And Katie,
great.
if you don't mind waiting to go after Liz, just so we can keep the flow.
Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Frank. I challenged you a few weeks ago in the Year to Live program
Oh,
about
yeah.
courageous, yes, remember, courageous invulnerability, which I cannot accept.
Mhm.
And I'm very happy to hear you talk about accepting vulnerability today, because for me that's my work right now in life. I'm 85 years old and I'm
Mhm.
working with accepting my vulnerability and being with it.
Yeah, good for
So
you.
thank you. For me it's so important. But I'm wondering if you want to talk about courageous invulnerability, because most of us didn't understand that.
Well, it was a different talk, and so I'll try and fill in
Yeah.
the blanks here, but it's because I don't want to
Okay.
confuse the people who are on this call.
Sure. If you don't want to talk about it, it's okay.
Yeah. I was speaking in that call about three types of courage. And one of those is the courage that we commonly think of courage, the courage of the warrior, the first responder, the soldier that marshals this kind of courage to go into what seems difficult to meet. And the challenge with this particular type of courage is that it's easily manipulated. We can manipulate it for the wrong reasons. And then there's the courage of heart, which is to receive the beauty and difficulty of our world in a lion's heart, we could say, yeah. And this courage has just as much fearlessness as the courage of the warrior. And the last courage I was speaking about was the courage of vulnerability, which is I was just speaking to. And I think what I was trying to say then, and I'll just say it briefly now, is that that courage can introduce us to an invulnerability. It's not that we have the courage to be in. What it does is it introduces us to the invulnerability of our nature. The nature of our nature, our Buddha nature, is by its nature. It cannot be harmed. It doesn't live or it doesn't die. And this quality of invulnerability is what I'm speaking to. Not that we can't be hurt, our bodies can't be hurt, our personalities can't be hurt, but that the nature of our nature is beyond all of this. And we can know this in our lives. We can know this in our lives. So that's all I'll say on that for now. I hope that's
Thank you, Frank.
Yeah.
We'll meet again.
Okay, good.
Thank
All
you.
right. Is there somebody else with their hand raised or with a question in the chat that we can address?
Yeah, so there's Katie.
Okay. Hi, Katie.
Hi, thanks for that. I actually had a question in the chat that I'll just say now. It's
Yeah,
simple.
please, Katie.
You talked about longing as something positive, I think, but what's the difference between longing and grasping?
Yeah, well, good question. Grasping is often, not always, but often associated with fulfilling a particular wish, let's call it. Yeah. You know what that feels like, right? It's like this. I want it, I want it, I want it, I want it, Or sometimes it has this quality of seeking about it. Like I'm gonna, we've defined ourselves as seekers, and we're trying to get that particular kind of experience that we've been, we've heard about. I think seeking's a bad deal, actually. Yeah. But what I'm speaking about is something different. It's about wanting to come close to something we already know, that we already have a taste of, that we've smelled the fragrance of, that is already here in our nature. It isn't something outside ourselves that we're trying to get to fulfill ourselves. But that is, it's an act of love, this longing. Yeah? That's what motivates it, not some sense of deficiency. Yeah. It's an act of love. And we can feel in the longing, we can feel the love, yeah. And so sometimes, let's see what else I would say about this. Well, in our practice, right, in our meditation practice, our spiritual practice, we can know this. We can know that we want to return in a way. We want to return to something that we already know, that we love. Yeah. Like coming home to someone that you love. Yeah. And we can even feel it that way as a call, a kind of from a mythical mother, a good mythical mother, that says, come home, come home, come home. Yeah. This is the longing I'm speaking of.
That helps a lot. Thank you so much.
You're welcome, Katie. Thanks a lot. Yeah. So what else is on your hearts and minds? Tell me, you don't have to have a question, but tell me, what's the way you feel the absence of love, or what's the way that you feel the presence of love? How do you know those experiences in your life? And if maybe you have a response to one of those. Or if there's a comment or question in the chat, Katie, Faith, I'm happy to include those.
Okay, we've got two more people with their hands up, and then they asked,
All right.
I think, about 2 questions in the chat. I also just want to take the opportunity before, because I know some people leave around this time, just to remind people that these sessions are all run on a dana basis. So that is very much the act of love and generosity that we're talking about tonight, is in the way that we support ourselves in our practice and each other, and keep the lovely wheel of the Dharma moving. So Frank is not paid to be here. He prepares his talk and he shows up, and Sangha Live's all our work as well. We all show up with the good faith that the community will support us. So financial contributions tonight, anything that you give today within the next 3 hours will be shared with Frank, support Sangha Live's costs, and offered to Frank as for his teaching. So we're very grateful for anything that you can give. If you can't give a lot, if you can only give a little bit, that's still really, really welcome. And of course, if you can't give anything today, know that the community supports you, and that's how the whole system is built. So thank you very much. And I've put the link in the chat. It's sangha.live/donate. Okay, so I'll just bring Tina on now as well.
All right. Thank you, Faith. Who's up? Tina.
Hello.
Hi, Tina.
I was thinking about your question about telling you the way that I feel love, the presence of love in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that it comes in sort of spurts of sort of unconditional upliftedness and happiness. And even in difficult situations, there's just sort of more of an ease. But then I wonder sometimes, and this, I don't know if you have an answer for, is whether that upliftedness is sort of a desire or a longing for a predictable outcome of goodness and mercy and Buddha nature for however things will go. So right. I try, and I don't want to be Pollyannish about it, but I want to be uplifted about even difficult things that we're facing right now. But I don't want to be fooling myself. So that's just my
beautiful, Tina, wonderful. So the experience that you're describing when you feel the presence of love is this quality of what you call being uplifted. Yeah. There's a feeling of being uplifted, yeah. So let's play with that for a second, Tina. What's it like feeling uplifted? What's it like?
It feels expansive. It feels boundless. It feels like the entire space around.
Wow, that's a lot. Well, that's
Yeah.
a whole lot. Yeah.
It's big. It's big. It's bigger than me,
It's bigger than me. Yeah,
but
bigger
I'm
than
in it.
bigger than the way I've defined myself in the past, at least. Yeah, yeah. So that experience that you just described so beautifully, it's not grasping. It's the natural, some of the many expressions of love. Yeah. Now, what happens after you have that experience? That could be grasping. You know, I want it again. I had that the other day. I want it again. It's like, you know, I really like that, you know, ice cream I had the other day and I want it again. You know, so that's where we have to be a little mindful, careful, if you will, about what our reaction is to that. You know, how we then go about, we get engaged in the seeking process instead of a recognizing process. Recognizing this is already here. I didn't do something to get this uplifting quality. It just was here. It appeared as a face of reality. Yeah. And so that recognition, the increased recognition of, oh, that's not just some experience that's moving through my head. It's actually, I realize it to be true, fundamentally true. And when that realization starts settling in, then we're not going looking for it anymore because we know ourselves to be it. Yeah. Okay?
Thank you.
You're welcome. Very welcome. Okay. Faith, is there someone else or
Yeah, Gina. Oh no, Gabby, sorry.
Gabby, okay. Hi, Gabby.
Hello. Hi, good morning. I'm in the Pacific time.
There you are.
I think I like to want to reflect a little bit on the meditation. You
Students, Buddhist Ramana Manisha. I actually subscribe.
1 second, we're getting a double voice here.
Yeah.
Pardon us, Gabby. Someone else must have their mic on. Faith, and we just have
Yeah,
Gabby?
just muted the person. We're good, yeah.
Okay, sorry, Gabby. Would you start again?
Yeah. When I was in the meditation with you, it was different for me. I haven't experienced like you said, welcome, and then try not to push away.
Welcome everything, push away nothing.
Push away
Okay.
nothing. Yeah. Because I've been dealing with that right now, like just a lot of unsettledness, you know, that is to welcome.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, let's welcome this, let's welcome that, let's welcome this. And not push away, not because I've been pushing away stuff lately, because it feels unsettled. You know, anytime I feel unsettled, like that's not that's not who I like. I don't like it.
Yeah, that's just the truth of it. I don't like it. I don't want it. Get out of here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So welcome doesn't mean that we have to like it, right? It just means it's at our doorstep. What has it got to show us? Yeah. I knew a man who was an eminent psychiatrist, and he developed dementia in his life. And he had difficulty recognizing people or names. And one time, another mutual friend came to his door and knocked and rang his doorbell, and he opened the door, and he stared at this guest for a moment, just, you know, not recognizing him. And he said, "I'm so sorry, I don't recognize people anymore." He said, "I don't know people's names, but I do know this is my home. And if you are on my doorstep, then my job is to welcome you in. Please come in." I thought that was a remarkable story. And that doesn't mean that we have to like everything or that, you know, we're going to let ourselves be treated like doormats, right? That's not what we're speaking about here. Welcoming is challenging our ideas of preferences. And as I said in the talk, it can't really be done as an act of will. It can only be done as an act of love. And it's to know, it's the wish to know fully, to know completely, to know intimately and immediately who we are. Yeah. And we can't do that if we're just cutting and dicing life's experience and saying, I want that, but I don't want that. Yeah. So when I say those things, how does it land?
I think it's part of life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Part of being in this journey, in this path.
Mm-hmm.
Not everything's going to be glamorous and pretty, and because it's not. Even though, I'm grateful where I live. I got my basic needs met, and I'm going into this treatment that's scary, but it's okay. I'll survive. I'll come out of it, and it's hard for me right now to offer love to others.
Mm-hmm.
Of this unsettledness, I don't have that extra
Mm-hmm.
energy to offer.
Mm-hmm.
So somebody reaches out to me, like I'm just not available, unfortunately. Yeah. And I feel, feel sad about it. I feel guilty about it too. But I'm in a point where I need like reset, refocus, read everything, kind of like a big overhaul.
Mm-hmm.
And then.
So this kind of self-care, self-stewardship that you're speaking of, it's really important, right? It's really important, and it's easy to forget it or skip over it in some way. There's one thing I want to say about our practice, though, that's really important to get, and it's a really essential element of our practice. Our practice doesn't protect us from difficult things in life. Mm-hmm. It's not a great defender and protector of the bad things won't happen to us. What our practice does is give us a capacity to work with what is difficult, to see into what is difficult, to understand something about it, and to be able to work with it skillfully. So doing meditation practice, even metta practice, doesn't keep bad things from happening to us, or cause us to not have to deal with what is painful in our life. Yeah. It gives us the skills to work with it as in a way that there's not so much suffering. Yeah. So take good care of yourself. That's important. That's really important. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like it's a good tool to have.
Yeah.
I know I'm not alone. And I know, thank you for your teaching and spreading the message as well.
Yeah, you're very welcome. And, of course, there's going to be stuff we don't like, and there's going to be people we don't like. And, we're going to sometimes face things that seem impossible. Or we're going to be so stirred up by something, we just want to scream. But I want to suggest something, which is that normally when something really difficult is happening for us, we imagine we only have two choices, to express it or to repress it. Yeah? And I would like to suggest that there's a third option. And that third option is to contain it, or we might say hold it, to hold it. And what we were speaking about love today, love is that holding environment that allows us to stay with what we would rather run away from. Yeah. So that's the third option, to hold the experience. Okay? Thanks, Gabby. Well, Faith, I don't know, are we out of time now?
Yeah, we're out of time.
We're out of time. I thought we were coming close to the end of time. You're very welcome, Faith. Thank you for your being our wizard today and making this all go so smoothly really appreciate that. And to everybody else, I just want to say thank you for your willingness to participate, to listen and speak, and to listen to those who speak. And that's much of what Sangha is about, I think. Yeah. And so thank you for coming on this Sunday, and I hope that there's something useful in what I had to say to you. But I want to add that please don't accept it just because I said it. You know, take it home with you, chew on it. If it tastes good, swallow. If it doesn't taste good, spit it out. It's really important that you honor your own autonomy and begin to really trust in your own deep practice. That's very important to me and I think to the world. So thank you very, very much. May each of us and all beings be free of suffering. May each of us and all beings find their way to truth, to happiness, to their own deep nature. Thank you very much.